Kara, thanks for joining us today in our little recording den and the end of the exhibition hall. So we're recording this live if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're listening to us and you hear some background noise, it's because it's a big old conference.
There you go.
And also allows us to come in and talk to some thought leaders and some folks who have some interesting points of view and lots of experience, and that's where you came in. So if you're ready, we'll just dive in with the first question.
All right.
And we'll tag team you.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I was excited to be considered a thought leader. Yeah. I thought I was asked because I've been around for a long time. So
you know,
experienced thought leader. It's so
you
good.
can be a certain
seasoned.
age. Well, you can be a certain age and still be dumb as a box of rocks. So I feel like, not you, but I mean, I just feel like that's age does not necessarily confer wisdom. Sorry to break it to you and to me. It doesn't. But you, as a recovering development director, what made me want to talk to you is something that I've encountered so much, and it's leading into our first question. I would say seasoned, as a veteran, with someone with significant experience in grant writing and fundraising. How do you think the two areas are related, and how are they different? Because people have thoughts and feelings about this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
People do have thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And I actually feel that they are related more than they're different.
Yep.
The things that I see as us being related, and I have to say, a caveat is, I've always worked in a small person shop. So
Right,
it's
so
always
you're
just
like,
been...
There's no division of church and state. You're like, I am here doing the work.
Well, and the other thing is my department, I have a team member of one. Awesome shout out to her, Lisa. She's fantastic.
Lisa.
We are also marketing and social media content and all of those things as well. But I do believe that grant writing and fundraising we're in harmony in so many ways. And I think it's because we approach our work with an opportunity mindset. Because we do the scan, we see the opportunities before us, and we look for ways to make things happen for our organizations, more things happen for organizations, and to amplify our organization's work. I think that is absolutely a common denominator that fundraisers and grant writers, you have to have it in common.
Right,
You're in the wrong field if you don't. But yes, you absolutely have to have that, and I feel we share that. And another thing that I really feel that we all have in common is we have to see the organization from both a macro perspective and a micro perspective.
Fair.
Because I don't think you can be an effective grant writer or fundraiser if you are only seeing a pocket, like one program. I mean, you might write a lot of grants for one program because it's going to be the one that just has the most need.
Right.
But you really have to be effective, that micro view of the organization. You need to know where your pain points are as an organization. And grant writing, just like fundraising, is very relational.
This is true.
And I don't think, really, there's much difference between grant writing and major gifts. The approach to
Hot take.
Yes.
I'm totally with you, but there are people who would be like,
No, it is absolutely relational. People give to people, and that is so trite, and I almost hate saying it, but it's the truth.
It's the truth.
Now, maybe with government funding, it is maybe not as much the case.
Well,
But it can be. And I will, full disclosure, my experience with government grants, no federal experience, state experience.
sure.
But that being said, I've had some great relationships with state folks that can pull some strings behind the scenes to make things move along.
Yep.
This is true.
And foundation, in Pittsburgh, we're very blessed with the third wealthiest foundation community in the country. So
I did not know that.
Yes. So
Pittsburgh.
it is really important to build those relationships because they have their own interests.
Yes.
Program officers have their own interests,
Yes.
and they're people too, just like you. And if you treat them like an ATM machine, just like you treat your donors like an ATM machine,
Not going to be good.
it's not good practice. So I think they're very, very similar. And especially for small shops like me, I think that's why we can move fluidly between the work. You know, I do a lot of grant writing and I do other things too in fundraising, but I can fluidly move between them because you always have a lot of projects in a lot of different places. You have to work with a lot of different people and project manage. So we can fluidly move between those worlds. Where I do see a difference sometimes, and I really think it's more in perception. and I have a funny story to share too. But I think fundraisers kind of have a reputation as, hey, the party people.
Yes,
know.
yes, they do.
They plan, we are seen, and I say we because I am a fundraiser, we are seen as the people that, the party people. They're always going to lunch with someone.
Or in the South, perhaps the golfers.
The golfers. Well, we host a golf outing.
Absolutely,
Yes.
nothing
So,
wrong with that.
We're the people that go to lunch, and it's very mysterious. Like, what is happening at these lunches? Like, what's happening at lunch? What's happening on the golf course?
On the links? What's going down?
What's the big mystery that's going on? So we're perceived as the party people. Like, someone told me once, if I had an entrance song, it would be that Bruno Mars song, Uptown Funk.
Nice.
That would be my entrance song, which I'm totally an introvert.
Yeah, but introverts need entrance songs.
I'm a full believer in everyone having an entrance song, but my point is, not all fundraisers are extroverts.
It's true.
But I think that grant writers often are perceived as the introverts. Now, maybe many are, but I
Sometimes
think
they're
it's.
not.
I know. I was like pointing at Amanda is not an introvert.
And sometimes they're
very
not.
successful.
So, certainly, sweeping generalizations here, everyone's experience will vary. You can be a super effective fundraiser and be an introvert.
Yep.
You can be a super effective grant writer and be a total extrovert. Now, what I will say is, I've been to the AFP conference.
Me too.
And I've been to the GPA conference.
They're different.
They are.
They're very different.
different. My first GPA conference, I walked in and I expected it to be like an AFP conference because it's a dull roar. You walk into an AFP room and it's, hey, there's. And when I walked into the room, it was just so quiet and very studious. It was like a study group. But the intimacy and the small group interaction. I mean, obviously, I love it. I love the conferences. I love the GPA conference. But, it's kind of funny that was my experience at the conference because it was a dull roar in the AFP room.
Yeah.
That's wild. It made me think about this morning when someone wanted to know who was knitting at table 30 something. I'm just like, wow, yeah.
I don't know that you'd have that in an AFP conference.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But yeah, so I really think there's more commonalities than there really are differences. And I think most of the differences are probably perceived.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
I'm a sample of one.
There you go. Okay. Well, and that leads into our next question so brilliantly, which thanks for writing good questions, Kimberly.
I am here to help.
So if they do have so much in common, what would you say are the skills that are transferable from one to another? Because there are a lot of organizations that it is only a grant writer position, it is only a fundraiser position.
That's how I got my start. It was in a large hospital foundation.
And some people want to make the switch, but they're worried they can't do it, especially grant writers. I don't know how many times I've heard a grant professional go, I could never do fundraising. I'm the grant writer. And I'm like, I bet you could. You figured out a federal grant proposal? I bet you could figure out fundraising. So what do you think are some of the transferable skills?
I think a lot of people get their start in fundraising maybe as event people purely.
Yes.
That's fair.
I actually think it's an easier transition for a grant writer to go into a fundraiser role than it would be an events person because grant people need to have, again, I said it before, the ability to see the bigger picture of what the organization's needs are, specifically the pain points within like, why is this program losing money and what are the funding needs for this program and where are shortfalls, which an events person, a pure events person may not have that perspective, whereas a grant writer will.
True.
Detail orientation.
Yep.
If you're going to be a fundraiser, whether you're doing major gifts work, planned giving work, events, you have to be detail oriented. It's just ability to manage different things that are in different places. But it's a great, grant writing is an awesome training ground, I believe, for a larger role in fundraising. Can't say this enough. It probably should have been my number one or my last one, but emotionally intelligent. You've got to be able to read people.
Yep.
And you have to be able to work with a lot of different kinds of people. And I think grants, again, it's a great training ground for that because you have to relate to people. It's super relational. You have to relate to a lot of different kinds of people, funders, people in the organization that you're trying to get information from. And I think it's a great way to position yourself for a career in fundraising. Strategic and critical thinking both.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have to have both. Ability to synthesize and analyze data because they're different, and excellent communication skills. And a last one, which is more tactical, but I think you need to be able to do it, is budgeting.
I was about to say, either you figure it out or you make friends with your finance
Well,
department,
and
right?
I'll tell you what, that's another thing. I think fundraisers get a reputation that they can't build a budget to save their life.
Yeah.
I've always worked really, really well with our finance office.
Nice.
And have great relationship with any organization's finance department I've ever worked within. But I think your grant writer has a leg up there because they're used to working with budgets.
It's true. We used to call it development math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Development math.
Yeah. Plug the whole. Well, yeah, and it gets
Round
thrown
up,
at
you're
us.
rounding up, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You're rounding up, yeah.
Well, but same with grant writing. I mean, a lot of people come to it thinking, oh, it's a writing job, and I can write well, right? But that
That's how I got. That's how I
writing
thought
doesn't
about it.
always translate to
It's like
budgets,
20%
right?
of what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True story.
So I am curious, having gone from grant writer to more senior levels, and then in more of a development director role before I started consulting. There were some skills that I had maybe a little unexpectedly brought to the table, but I'm just, enough about me, I am curious about you. What would you say would be some good advice for someone who might want to explore other roles, or maybe is looking to, it loves smaller or medium-sized nonprofits, and that's just part of the gig, that you're doing more than one role. What kind of advice would you give to someone who might be wanting to move from grants strictly into more grants plus fundraising, other things?
Sure. I think the first thing, and I'm a strong believer in this, even if you're not looking to make a switch, is find a mentor.
Fair.
Find someone who can mentor you. If you are a member of a GPA, Grant Professionals Association, they have a wonderful mentoring program.
Yep.
And I would encourage all of our members who haven't taken advantage of it to, and those of you who are maybe more seasoned in your career, to sign up to be a mentor, because it really is I'm a mentor. It's a very meaningful experience.
It is.
But I would find a mentor, even, if it's someone within the organization that maybe you work as part of a larger development shop. And that's one thing that I really love about the fundraising profession is we are all very willing to share.
Yeah.
And I think if you can have a conversation with someone within your organization that you're looking to expand your role, and I don't think they would be threatened by that in any way. I think they would be happy to hear, especially in the labor market today, that you're willing and interested in taking on more and learning more. So find a mentor outside the organization or inside your organization. And just kind of piggyback on that, if you work in a larger organization where maybe you are a grant writer, but there's a plain giving person or a major gifts person or an events person, see if you can cross-train a little bit with them.
Yeah.
Get exposed to those areas to see what you like, and if you are able to learn some of those translated skills. And then if you don't get a bite within your organization to be able to do that,
Right.
get involved in a nonprofit board. It's a great experience
Nice.
to serve on a nonprofit board, and that has a couple added benefits. Is, as a fundraiser, one of the things that my peers and I, it's difficult sometimes to get board members to fundraise.
No, I am so shocked.
You may have
You've
heard-
never experienced that.
You may have heard this does happen, but it changes your perspective when you're sitting on a board
Oh, yeah.
and you are asked to fundraise or make a personally significant gift.
Yeah.
And you are much better able to understand from a board member's perspective everything that is being asked of board members. So if you get nothing else out of the experience, you will get that perspective. But if you're looking to go for your grant professional certification and or your CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive, serving on a nonprofit board or even a committee is going to get you some points.
That's true.
And it's also going to help you see, like, maybe I want to be on their 5K committee or their golf committee or gala committee or something. And you'll get a taste for whether you really like that work or not.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. Thanks for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
And there are also plenty of opportunities within GPA.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I give a shout out to the GPA mentoring program. I'm a mentor, as I said. I would encourage anyone who isn't, sign up and look for that mentor. There is a way you can sort, I believe, to be connected to someone who has broader fundraising experience.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I second on the GPA mentor. I've done that once. It was I love doing it. So you can do it and then not do it and then do it again.
Yeah.
It's not a lifetime commitment.
Well,
so sign up.
Well, and it's very much driven by your mentee.
Yes.
That's true.
It can be twice a year based on what they need, or it could be once a month, or whatever they need. It's really, I let the mentee, at least in my relationships, I let it be driven by them. It's their agenda.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Absolutely. So, well, let's shift gears here. So we've talked a lot about the grant writing and fundraising side.
Do we need a sound effect for shifting gears?
There you go.
It's going to be smoother than that.
Let's hope so. So we do spend a lot of time. People can really focus on the grant writing because it's the pressure to get the money, the money. But the reality is the grant management piece is a whole other ballgame that can be sometimes more difficult, more complicated. But it really is super important because anytime I tell people, I'm like, look, my number one job is to keep the money we already have. Then we can worry about more money, but let's not mess up what we have.
But that's not the exciting part.
I
right?
know.
Everybody wants to get that big old check, and it's like, hello.
Yes. So, but what, do you have some common mistakes that people are making when it comes to grant management, particularly with foundations? Because I feel I switched. I did a lot of federal grants, and there is a whole host of rules. There's almost too many rules, but it's kind of nice having those guardrails. Mm-hmm. And as someone who now does foundation grants, I'm almost like, but wait, there's not 2 CFRE to follow, and there's not, what do I do? So some helpful hints when it comes to grant management.
Well, I tried to keep my pitfalls list to only 3, but I have to say it was really hard to keep it to only 3.
I'm sorry, we're mean with our questions sometimes.
Yeah,
so I could list about 30, but
okay.
Counting down to the big one at the end, I think the first mistake is not communicating the award and expectations to the full team, whomever that is in your organization. It's going to be different. Typically, it is program folks, it is finance.
Yep.
And of course you, and then anybody else on the development team that you maybe are working with. Because I think what's sometimes happens is it's so top of mind for us that it's easy to think, well, everybody else,
surely
this
they
is top
know.
of mind for them.
Yeah.
They know.
Or they know how it works.
Exactly. And no,
they
absolutely.
don't.
And they're working on other things.
Yeah.
And many times, as we know, there's such a time delay in between when you put the grant proposal in and when you actually get the award or can start spending money.
Yeah, you've forgotten by then.
Much has happened. Things have changed.
Yep.
So I encourage everyone, set up a kickoff session, whether it's virtual or in person, and give everybody a really quick written summary that you provide to all of them. Yes. And some of my colleagues actually have people at the meeting sign this summary.
That's what Danny
We have a friend who does that.
And I don't go that far. I'd like to take the bloody fingerprints sometime and put it at the bottom of the paper, but don't do that.
Forget signature, it's a blood oath.
We're going to blood swear that
chalice,
we're
a blade.
Exactly, yeah. Don't go that far, but give them the summary and even, one of my rules, and I heard this on another podcast somewhere, is assume the least pathological intent. And I keep going back to that.
Okay, fair.
Yes.
Fair.
Don't assume bad intent, but remember, this isn't their job. It's not their primary job anyway. And there could have been turnover. And many other things are in the way. So have that meeting to reset and remind folks. Remember that grant that we submitted like 18 months ago? Well, yay, it came and you already deposited the check and here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So that's number one. I think the second mistake that is made is not communicating frequently enough post-award. So you can't just have the kickoff meeting. I think there needs to be some kind of regular check-in with the program and finance team.
I concur.
And this is driven by your organization. I mean, I'm not saying every week, and I'm not saying every month. Maybe quarterly is enough, but just check in and make sure that things are on track. Something that my organization does that I find incredibly helpful is I get a restricted fund report every month that really gives me an indicator of, are those funds sitting there? Because yeah, it's a lag indicator. Granted, it's a month after the fact, but still, I can get ahead of that and see, okay, that makes me look at it with my critical eye, which I mentioned critical thinking before, and say, I don't see that dropping. That fund should be dropping. And it makes me ask some questions. Mm-hmm. And then usually the answer I find out is, that's on order, supply chain, whatever, but we just haven't paid the bill yet. Okay, that's a very different answer.
Or maybe something's miscoded. Like if you're in a larger organization, it's coded to the wrong.
Right. So that's when it's really helpful to have that check in with them, and especially the program folks. Like, did you hire the staff? How are things going?
Yes.
Do you anticipate that this is going to be an issue? Reminding them about the outcomes that need to be collected, and even doing maybe some data sampling.
Yeah.
I like to be ahead of it. And if I don't like surprises like that at all.
Yeah. I say, as a young grant professional, I learned the hard way. I just assumed that person is so excited about this grant.
They're going to spend it. It's going to be awesome.
And you're right. They have a full-time job, and this is extra. And so they're like, I meant to get to that.
Yep.
And so I did the same thing. Every month I would check in. I didn't get a fancy report. I had to log into our finance system and look into the account. But I would check every month, and same thing. I'm like, hey, we started with $80,000. We still have $80,000.
Yep.
What's happening?
How can I
Or
help?
Not happening?
How can I help?
Well, and
So-
I filed this one under a theme. A very wise colleague of mine once, she would always ask me, do they know? And I would say to her, they've been told. There's a difference between do they know and have they been told. They've been told, but do they know? I cannot assess whether they know.
Yeah.
And it's not safe to assume they know simply
it is
because they
not.
were told. So those check-in meetings will help you to determine if they really know and understand and have integrated it into their process. And then the last one, and this is where we've all gotten bitten, is not starting the interim or final report process early enough. Yeah. So obviously, you can't wait until a month before it's due to send your little inquiry out to the program and finance team and say, hey guys, remember that grant we got? It's time. Here's what I need.
It's
with a
just
list of all these
time.
things.
Winter is coming.
Yes. Yes. Winter is upon us. So if you have done these other things, the communicating at the kickoff meeting, I will be asking for this, and then obviously backing up the time frames. I will be asking for this, and then I think it's respectful to ask, how much lead time do you need to get this to me?
Right.
And those are things that you can determine by having those check-in meetings. I call it active monitoring.
Nice.
But it is the biggest thing. I can't say enough about active monitoring because if you really are on it, I'm not going to say one doesn't slip through occasionally and burn you, but it's less likely if you've been actively monitoring.
You don't have that scrambling feeling.
Yes.
Now, full disclosure, this takes more time.
Yeah.
Because we'd like to just be writing grants, not meeting with people and hurting everybody, the cats into doing what we need them to do. But it's spend the time now or experience a lot of pain later.
Absolutely. I made the mistake once. Thankfully we caught it very early, but we had a grant for, we were doing a bicycle safety campaign, and so our police officers were going to all kinds of events and handing out bike helmets and safety materials and other things, and one of the parts of our reporting was at each event we were supposed to count how many things we'd given away and how many interactions with people we had to show our reach. And it was after the first event that I was like, hey, I need these numbers, and thank goodness I asked, because I really didn't need them till the end of the year. They were like, oh my gosh, we didn't. I'm like, well, the good news is we started with 100 bike helmets. How many do we have left?
Let's do
We've
some
done
math.
one event.
Mathing.
So we were able to figure it out. But if I had waited till the end, we couldn't have said for
Right.
each event. And so those check-in early and often things really are smart, because you can at least, sometimes you can figure out the problems early.
That's true. That's true.
Well, and sometimes it's just life gets in the way. Maybe they needed to hire someone and they couldn't hire someone.
Yeah, because of the market or
Right.
for
And,
whatever.
and again, I go back to don't, assume the least pathological response here or intent, but, got to come up with a plan.
It's true.
Yeah, you really do.
So I wanted to back up to make sure that people were understanding we weren't just firing random questions at you of like fundraising, now grant management. It's because you're actually, we're recording this live at the 2023 Grant Summit where you are presenting on grant management. So I just wanted to circle back with that. But one of my final questions would be, if you're setting up a grant management system, we've talked about let's have some active monitoring, let's check in, let's don't wait till the last minute, I loved that. You told them, but do they know? That could be a temporary tattoo for next year.
But do they know?
Do they know? So helping them know, sort of transitioning into maybe talking a little bit about grant management systems, because there are all kinds of, we're sitting in an exhibit hall right now, all kinds of vendors of all kinds of products. I think Amanda did a bang-up job with some spreadsheets and binders.
Oh, back in the day.
Back
that was
in the
old
day,
school methods.
uphill
yes.
in the snow, both ways
both
to
ways.
grant management. But is there a way to bridge those two extremes and sort of talk to us a little bit more about what you should look for in grant management system?
So, funny aside,
Yeah.
most people probably still use spreadsheets.
I'm not judging. I'm just
And that is where I was about a year ago.
okay.
And that coming to this conference and talking to my colleagues got me really thinking, like, I can't do it this way anymore because
you
of everything
could,
else.
but
that
there
we
might be a better way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was time to do some research.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Trying to look at the most important things to consider. I think a lot of people are going to expect me to say cost, but it's really not cost.
Okay.
I think the two biggest things to consider, and this is more from an implementation and selection lens,
Yeah.
it will fail if you do not involve the end users from the very beginning of the conversation, because you cannot make these decisions in a silo.
That's true.
Now, if you are a grants consultant and it's your business, then
Different. That's different.
absolutely. But I'm talking more to the development officers or grant professionals who are part of a larger operation where it's, they work with other people. So involve the end users and the right people at the beginning. Now, I know in my approach, when I got started on it, even though it's a team member and myself, I talked to IT, information technology, and finance at the very onset.
So some of your end users.
And I wasn't sure if they would be end users, but I asked them, this is what I'm considering. What would you like your role to be? Like, what do you want to be part of the process? And what we were able to determine was, from finance, I was not looking to change anything in their workflow.
Fair.
And the workflow with finance and the way that we needed to have our reporting at month end balance out, fundraising needed to match finance, and it was working well with our CRM. I was not looking to change that.
Right.
So finance gave me their blessing and said, go forth and select a system that works for you, as long as it's budget neutral or fits within your budget,
Because
which is
they're
another.
finance, it's their job. It's
Right.
their
Yes.
job to say that.
But truthfully, I was already there. Like, if it's
course
not
you
budget
were.
neutral, I'm not going to do it. But they gave me their blessing to go forth and select what I needed. It didn't affect their workflow. Same with IT. All of the platforms we were looking at were cloud-based.
Right.
They didn't, I asked about security concerns or anything like that. Is there anything I needed to ask on the front end when I started to shop? And they gave me some pointers, but they did not need to be involved in the decision-making process. But I invited them.
Smart.
Now, for your organization, like for me, I have a team of two, myself and one other person. She and I both looked at products, and I looked at 17 different products
Wow.
over 3 months.
There's a lot out there.
And
There
she
is.
and I were, and there's way more than that, I'm
Yep.
sure. And she and I were both testing them and looking at them with different lenses. Her more from the event management, marketing, SEO, social media, content management side. Myself more for grants management and major gifts, because I ended up with a project management platform.
Interesting.
But involve the users, let them get ownership, because you will not get buy-in if you do not.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it will not be successful. And actually, in doing research, I'm presenting, as Kim mentioned, I'm presenting on choosing a grant management platform. 75% of business operations software fail. 75% fail. That's
Yeah.
a lot of time and money and resources.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the number one reason they fail is because the end users were not involved,
And
Yeah.
they're not using that. They
Yep.
yeah.
and they're not using it. So
Yeah.
don't make that mistake. And the second thing I would encourage everyone to look at, and it's more pertaining to the product, is their user experience, i.e., ease of use. Does it align with your workflow? Does it make sense to you? Like, when you look at it, is it intuitive? And that's going to be a different question for everyone. Like, how do you do your work? What's your workflow look like? Could it look like this? Do you want it to look like this? Because if it doesn't, it's not going to work for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I looked at some platforms where my spreadsheet, make fun of it if you want, it was one step. Some of these platforms I looked at, it was 5 steps to do the same thing I could do in 1 step in a spreadsheet.
It's true.
I'm not going to use that. I don't want to add steps to my process. So, or if the learning curve is too steep to learn the platform, no one's going to use it. And what good is it? I mean, you can have the best platform in the world, but if your users aren't using it, you might as well have your spreadsheet.
It makes me think of when I first started writing grants. I was for a foundation for a large pediatric hospital. So there were grant writers, there were fundraisers, there were events people. It was a big workplace, and it's not important which platform it was, but it's one that's still around today, right? And they didn't do that. They didn't involve. So there was actually a sub-department that was all about sports activities. You can imagine, in Atlanta, there was all sorts of golf and running and walking and tennis and all sorts of activities. And that sub-department just sort of refused to use it. And because they were bringing in so much money, I mean, it was sticky.
Yeah.
And then, so for the rest of us who were trying to use it or trying to get reports, because sometimes corporate foundations would both sponsor and give grants, and and it was just a mess sometimes. But yeah, they weren't, none of us were asked. I just found the system pretty easy to use, but they were just like, we just can't work with this.
Yeah.
So
and it's not only ease of use too, it's like making them understand, hey, yes, it works well, but also you need to use it. Because I worked in a local government where we created our own management system. So our IT department built what we wanted from what I wanted as a grant person from scratch. And it was beautiful and lovely. And for me, and one of my dreams was now, instead of all my program people calling me constantly going, when's that report due? Remind me when this. All they had to do was log in. It was all there. But they were all so used to, it's so easy to pick up the phone and call Amanda.
Right.
And I was too young and sweet to go, as of this day, I'm no longer answering your questions. If I had to do it all over again, I would go back and go, I'll come and spend an hour with you. I can show you how to use the system. But I was just too nice, and I would log in myself. Here's what it is. Okay. And so it sort of saved me time, but it didn't save me the time it could have if I had
I've
pushed
always
back on
said
my program
between us,
people.
you are the nice one, so I'm not surprised. Yeah,
so buy-in's important.
And I think you get that buy-in by helping them understand what the value proposition is for them.
Yep.
I can write more grants for you if I'm not answering your questions.
Exactly.
Hello.
Or this report that I keep asking you for, it'll actually auto-populate that report.
Then now we're talking. Now we
And
got
you
it.
won't have to send me this every month, because you can just fill it out in here and it'll produce it and update it every month.
Sold.
Nice.
Buy-in right here.
Buy-in.
I'm in.
It's not even your system.
I
And
didn't
you're
matter. I'm
completely
in.
bought in. I love it.
No. Very good. Well, what I'd love to wrap up on is where people can find you if they want to know about your organization you work for and the work that you're doing.
Or maybe where you're presenting next.
Yes, sir. So how can people reach out if they have questions or interest?
Well, I will be here this afternoon presenting, and all sessions are going to be recorded. So if you aren't able to catch my session, GPA will be putting those up. And I encourage everyone to check that out. And my session is really intended, it's providing a spreadsheet as a tool to help you in your decision-making process for choosing a grant management platform. So I'm speaking to the spreadsheet folks.
I love it.
And then on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I'm very active on LinkedIn, and you can connect to me on LinkedIn. And we really just like to have a dialogue with folks, and I'm always looking to learn from my colleagues as well.
Absolutely.
So that's probably the best way.
I just think it's so important for us to make sure we're bringing on folks who are also, not that it's wrong to talk to consultants, because we're consultants, but bringing on folks who are working within agencies, I think it just is a whole different perspective.
It is.
That you can bring. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I remember when I was coming up in my career, I had a wonderful mentor.
Nice.
And I have always felt, I'm hoping that someone can get a nugget. If they get one nugget from our interaction at a conference or a presentation, then, that's my goal.
That's a win. That's a win. Well, you've helped us win today, so thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.